Hi, welcome to 912 News. My name is Sully Grasso. I'm a photographer and videographer, as well as one of the many assistant organizers for South Pinellas 912 Patriots. I'd like to start off with a retraction that I did on episode 1. The first one was the issue with when President Obama in 2009 was harassing the state of Arizona. And at that time, it was Governor Jan Brewer who was the governor. Well, we remember when Jan Brewer, the governor, met President Obama right on the tarmac, and I said it was President Obama that was pointing his finger in her face. Well, I stand corrected. It was Jan Brewer who was pointing her finger in his face, and I still say kudos to Jan. Okay, so I stand corrected there. The second retraction is I was talking about CRTV, and I was talking how the TV has 20 magnificent, wonderful, different talk show hosts, and they're conservative, and I meant to say libertarian, and the slip of the tongue, I said liberal. So it's retraction number 2. I stand corrected there. Okay, so let's get started locally. Here in St. Petersburg, we're still talking about what? Red tide? Red tide, we've had in the past red tide, and it comes and it goes. But this time, red tide is not going away. Now we have all these agencies, all these smart people. You can't get any smarter than these people, still can't figure out why the red tide is still here. Well, let me interject something. You remember when we had that storm surge and billions of gallons of raw sewage spilt into the Gulf? What is the sewage? It's just glorified fertilizer, in other words. And what feeds on fertilizer is plants. What is red tide? It's a plant. Fertilizer doesn't go away once it's diluted in water. It stays in the water until it's absorbed by the plant. The currents, they move it around. It stays on the bottom. So, how smart do you have to really be to figure out this time red tide has a smorgasbord, and that's why it's not going away. I'm telling you. Oh, okay. I know you've heard that there's going to be a hearing with the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh today. Honest to God, I got to tell you, with all the facts that we now know, why are we having a hearing? Senator Grassley, will you have some canoodles? Can the Republicans... This would not happen if the situation was reversed, I guarantee you. The Republicans are such weenies. They're such weenies. There's I could count only on one hand the number of Republicans I really support, and all the rest of them, you're fired. That's right, you're fired. So let's review some of the facts that we know. Okay, this lady, should I call her a lady? She, when she was 17, said she was drunk out of her gore. She didn't even know how she got to the house. Fact number 1. Fact number 2, she claims that both Brett and his friend were in the bedroom, and Brett's friend first grabbed her and she pushed him away. Brett grabbed her, pushed her onto the bed, and was trying to tear her clothes and her one-piece bathing suit. Judge Kavanaugh denies this 100%. Okay? So here's the other side of the coin. Brett Kavanaugh, 65 women come out and say, this is not the Brett we know. I'm sure you've heard this. If not, that's fact number 2, 3. 3, okay, is that 3? All right. here's another fact. 30 years has gone by, and you would have thought this woman would have made some allegations when he was, during the Bush years, crickets, right? Let me ask you a question. How come there's no police report? There's no police report. You think this girl would have, well, of course she claimed, she admits she was drunk out of her gore. So there goes the police report out the window. Okay. Judge Kavanaugh is known, she has 2 young daughters. He's a coach of their soccer or basketball. He's been, throughout all these years, perfect clean record. And now, I don't want to say her name, but anyways, Frankenfeinstein, okay, I said it, Frankenfeinstein gets a letter from this secret lady, and she holds on to it since July. I mean, she had all the time in the world, all the questions in the world to ask Judge Kavanaugh, did she do it? No. Now she comes out at this 11th hour and presents it to the Judicial Committee. Honest to God, folks, if this isn't a scam and a setup, they're just trying to prolong this into the midterms. And I gotta tell you, if you don't get out to vote, because the other side that's their main mission. They kept telling us there's a blue wave coming. Well, okay. What about the red wave? Is there a red wave coming too? I haven't seen even a ripple from the Republicans. If they get the House, they get the Senate, it's lights out, people, lights out. All right, enough said, because it really irks me about this issue. Another is the darling of the socialist Democrats. That's right, that cornball kook who won her primary with 17,000 votes. That's something to brag about. Well, anyways, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is at it again. She's on Face the Nation with the fake journalist Jay Tapper. Now, I will give Jay a little credit for putting up the numbers on the board in this video you're about to see if you haven't seen it already. Let's take a look.
Forum has called for various new programs, including Medicare for All, housing as a federal right, a federal jobs guarantee, tuition-free public college, canceling all student loan debt. According to nonpartisan and left-leaning studies friendly to your cause, including the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities or the Tax Policy Center, the overall price tag is more than $40 trillion in the next decade. You recently said in an interview that increasing taxes on the very wealthy plus an increased corporate tax rate would make $2 trillion over the next 10 years. So where's the other $38 trillion going to come from?
Well, one of the things that we need to realize when we look at something like Medicare for All would save the American people a very large amount of money. And what we see as well is that these systems are not just pie in the sky. Many of them are accomplished by every modern civilized democracy in the Western world. The United Kingdom has a form of single-payer health care. Canada, France, Germany. What we need to realize is that these investments are better and they are good for our future. These are generational investments so that they're not short-term band-aids, but they are really profound decisions about who we want to be as a nation and how we want to act as the wealthiest nation in the history of the world.
Right. Now, I get that, but the price tag for everything that you've laid out in your campaign is $40 trillion over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. I understand that Medicare for All would cost more to some wealthier people and to the government and to taxpayers, while also reducing individual healthcare expenditures. But I'm talking about the overall package. You say it's not pie in the sky, but $40 trillion is quite a bit of money. And the taxes that you talked about raising to pay for this, to pay for your agenda, only count for 2. And we're going by left-leaning analysts.
Right. Well, when you look again at how our healthcare works, currently we pay much of these costs go into the private sector. So what we see is, for example, you know, a year ago, I was working downtown in a restaurant. I went around and I asked, how many of you folks have health insurance? Not a single person did, because they would have had to have paid $200 a month for a payment for insurance that had an $8,000 deductible. What these represent are lower costs overall for these programs. And additionally, what this is a broader agenda. We do know and we acknowledge that there are political realities. They don't always happen with just the wave of a wand, but we can work to make these things happen. And in fact, when you look at the economic activity that it spurs, for example, if you look at my generation, millennials, the amount of economic activity that we do not engage in, the fact that we delay purchasing homes, that we don't participate in the economy and purchasing cars, etc., as fully as possible is.
Okay, so I don't know if you caught on to listening to this bimbo. Yep, this bimbo. I may be wrong, but I think it was an economics major. Again, if she is, I don't know how she graduated. Anyways, if you got her take, the Democrats are getting dangerously close to their goal. Their argument is going to be, okay, we got $28 trillion deficit, debt. What's another couple of $1 billion? This is going to be their contra. This is going to be their golden goose. They're going to do this with every issue when they want money. For instance, here in Florida, Gillum has made some type of comment about education, that he's going to get the $6 billion that the highest corporate tax, that are going to save the $6 billion. He's going to tax them, and that's going to be thrown into schools. How many billions of dollars have we thrown into schools, and what has that got us? It's only feeding the fat cat unions. The school education is not getting any better with all the billions of dollars supposedly that's gone into the schools. Look at Tampa, Hillsborough. How many schools do they have now without air conditioning? All that money spent, not spent on the schools, not spent on the education, spent on the, you guess it, the unions. Okay, so that's my take on this bimbo. She's just repeating and spilling out her notes that Senator Bernie Sanders is coaching her with, as well as Soros, George Soros, that monster. Why is he still living? Why is he still living? It's only the good die young. Isn't that right? Tell the truth. Okay, let me take a deep breath. This, you know, I don't know what to tell you folks. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, on CRTV, like I told you, there's 20 great shows you can go to. You can get away from cable news, TV, and some of the radio shows, and you can watch these shows anytime you want. You could see them over and over again. This is how good CRTV has it over cable. Okay. Anyways, one of the outstanding shows that I watch is Andrew Wilkow. He's out of New York City. and his leading lead is Patriots, Conservatives, Republican. That's the order he comes off of. Considers himself a patriot first, conservative second, and a Republican third. I myself consider myself a conservative constitutionalist. I just got R behind my name. That's it, on a registered R. That's it. There's only 5 Republicans that I back. Okay? So anyways, Andrew, he has, I can't videotape per se his show. What I can do and I am allowed to do is record his audio. So I'd like you to listen to what he has to say.
Welcome to WellCow. I'm your host, Andrew Wilkow. Okay, we recently commemorated the anniversary of September the 11th, 2001. But 17 years on, what have we learned? We've learned that the old insanity is the new sanity, and vice versa. And what do I mean by that? Well, a sane perspective on the issue of jihad. We would be asking questions like, what do jihadists believe? What are their goals? What are their tactics and strategies? How will they use them to achieve their ends? What are the lessons of the jihadists who attacked our homeland on 9/11? And how can we stop Islamic supremacists from harming the United States of America going forward? But do that, and boom, you're a bigot and an Islamophobe. In Europe, even before hundreds of thousands of Muslims recently flooded their countries, creating major security concerns, there's been increasing Islamization for well over a decade. And the end result is enclaves where Sharia law is practiced that the police will not even patrol out of fear. The police fear neighborhoods in their own jurisdictions. There have been scandals of mass sexual abuse and slavery of young girls, but authorities, the elites, they don't want police bringing the offenders to justice. And there have been jihadist attacks carried out on concerts and subway platforms against offices of people who are drawing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Major cities like London are taking action to ban knives due to stabbings mainly perpetrated by young Muslim men. We've seen rampages where cars have been lit on fire and people have been run over en masse throughout the continent. And what happens after all of that? Citizens have gotten thrown in jail by their own governments for so-called hate speech. Challenging Islamic supremacy is now hate speech. Now, the United States has not been immune from attacks either from the Boston Marathon bombing to the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the San Bernardino city offices, Chattanooga Naval Reserve Center, to the bike path on the West Side Highway right here in New York City, not far from where I'm broadcasting. I could go on. We even have a terrorist compound in New Mexico. In Europe, some people are now just starting to ask the question, has mass Islamic migration been a good thing for their societies? And if some percentage of those who have immigrated don't wish to assimilate, but actually to live separately or worse, impose their regressive values, is that a good thing? In America, we haven't really had this conversation, in part because people are, again, afraid of being called Islamophobes and bigots. But if people in the Middle East hold deeply ideas that conflict with those on which the United States is based on freedom, religious expression, tolerance, equality, etc., shouldn't we be factoring that into our immigration policies? Why does the Middle East look the way that it does in the first place? As Conservative Review's own Daniel Horowitz has noted, America has admitted 2.2 million immigrants from majority Muslim countries from 2001 to 2018. Do we have any sense of what percentage of these immigrants hold Sharia above the Constitution or vice versa? Can you even ask that question in America today? Against this backdrop, you have Democrats and the media who criticize all other religions except Islam, a religion that fosters culture where women and gays are treated as not even human, and free expression is essentially outlawed. Isn't that kind of strange for the people that call themselves liberals? Or maybe it makes sense. After all, Democrats must be in awe of the governments of some of these Islamic republics where the leaders are never questioned. Everyone must toe the government and the party line, and the people at the top, they live like kings. Let's be honest, the progressive far left wishes they had that kind of totalitarian control. Democrats never seem to have a problem accommodating this religion. And it's only other religions they seem to not be able to stand anymore, unless, of course, we're talking about a social program they want to justify on the grounds of Judeo-Christian values, but that's a separate issue. Just ask yourself this. If hundreds of thousands of evangelical Christians flooded our borders, would Democrats, would the left, would academia, the media, welcome them with open arms? This left Islamic nexus is embodied by so-called social justice warriors like radical Linda Sarsour and her progressive friends who are increasingly dominating the Democratic Party. Is it any coincidence that Democrats have gone in the direction they've gone in, appeasing Iran, chastising Israel? This year, there were numerous Muslim Democratic candidates for national office, some of whom had very questionable ties to groups linked to the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamic supremacist groups. Shouldn't that concern all voters? The record in other Western nations of mass Islamic migration has been mixed at best in terms of cultural cohesion and integration. And here in the United States, we've always been a country that welcomes people regardless of their background, so long as they share our values and principles and wish to assimilate into our general culture. But the Democrats are willing to throw that out the window by supporting people like Sarsour. Need proof? Here's Linda Sarsour just last year calling President Trump a white nationalist and stepping on the idea of assimilation.
That we, when we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad, that we are struggling against tyrants and rulers, not only abroad in the Middle East or in the other side of the world, but here in these United States of America, where you have fascists and white supremacists and Islamophobes reigning in the White House. We have to stay outraged. Do not criticize me when I say that we as a Muslim community in these United States of America have to be perpetually outraged every single. When I wake up in the morning and I remember who's sitting in the White House, I am outraged. This is not normal, sisters and brothers. Those people sitting in the most powerful seats in this country is not normal. So do not ever be those citizens that normalize this administration, because when the day comes that something horrific happens to us or to another community, you will be responsible for normalizing this administration. Our number one and top priority is to protect and defend our communities. It is not to assimilate and to please any other people in authority. Our obligation is to our young people, is to our women, and make sure our women are protected in our community. And our top priority, even higher than all those priorities, is to please Allah and only Allah.
Okay, last but not least is another great CRTV member, John Smith. He goes to these White House briefings. He actually is in the news pool, and he comes off with daily reports on different subjects, and this one is on Google. Again, I can't videotape, but I can videotape him audio. I'd like you to listen to what he has to say about Google and their agenda.
Google out there now getting extremely political, and we know this from a stunning new video obtained by Breitbart News, where Google employees, after the 2016 election, they are expressing their determination to stop the Trump agenda and the populism it embodies. Now, this should terrify everyone, because Google is essentially the gateway to the internet. I mean, chances are when you open up a browser to look for something, you use Google. I mean, save for like the three of you out there who are like, nah, I'm more of a Bing guy. But you know, for most of us normal people who use Google, you don't even go to google.com anymore and type that out. You probably just type what you want to search for in the bar on the top of the page, and it takes you through Google. Now, the search engine, they process over 40,000 searches a second. That's 3.5 billion searches a day, trillions of searches a year. Actually, 90% of all internet searches are processed through Google. So when it turns out that a company that controls basically all of human information is run by a bunch of commie, pinko, partisan hacks, we're in trouble. Big trouble. In fact, the democracy hangs in the balance here.
Most people here are pretty upset and pretty sad for because of the election. But there's another group, small group, that we should also think about, who are very excited about the legalization of pot.
Yeah, man, legalization of weed, bro. But don't let that fool you. That was Google co-founder Sergey Brin making a joke. Yeah, we're just gonna smoke some weed because we're so upset that Donald won the election. But they are actually doing a lot more than just sitting around smoking doobies at the tech giant. They are actively working to influence American politics. Remember, just a few weeks ago when the president tweeted that Google search results for Trump news shows only the viewing reporting of fake news media. In other words, they have it rigged for me and for others so that almost all stories and news are bad. Fake news, CNN is prominent. Republican, conservative, and fair media shut out. Is it illegal? 96% of results on Trump news are from national left-wing media. Very dangerous. Google and others are suppressing voices of conservatives and hiding information and news that is good. They are controlling what we can and cannot see. This is a very serious situation, will be addressed. Now that what Trump was talking about was based on one person's study at PJ Media. So when we actually reached out, contacted Google to see if there was any truth to that, they sent us this generic BS statement they sent everyone that says, quote, search is not used to set a political agenda, and we don't bias our results toward any political ideology. And then they continue to go on and say, we continually work to improve Google search, and we never rank search results to manipulate political sentiment. But then according to the New York Daily News, Google does in fact prioritize credible, original reporting over conspiracy-pushing sites such as InfoWars. Well, tell me this. Who exactly is to determine what a conspiracy-pushing site is? Fox, for instance, has been accused of spreading conspiracies. Are they a conspiracy site? Conservative Review. CRTV has been accused of conspiracy theories. In fact, if you listen to Obama, Benghazi is a conspiracy. So, which means every site which reported fairly on Benghazi, they could be considered a conspiracy website that Google won't link to. I mean, seriously think about it. What does, in Google's eyes, count as a credible news site? So when I pushed back on Google about that, I of course got radio silence. But multiple sources I know familiar with Google's operations, including people who have worked there, told me that Google's algorithm absolutely does favor what they at Google consider to be journalistic credibility. And it is possible that their own inherent biases might play a role and cause them to restrict conservative-leaning sites. And we all know what those inherent biases are because Sergey Brin told us what they were in that video that leaked.
As an immigrant and a refugee, I certainly find this election deeply offensive, and I know many of you do too. And I think it's a very stressful time, and it conflicts with many of our values.
Huh. Well, what are those values? Certainly not free speech, because we know that from their censorship. Now, at one point, the company's CFO, Ruth Porat, started to tear up. Aw.
As we started to see the direction of the voting, I reached out to someone close to me who was at the Javits Center where the big celebration was supposed to occur in New York City, somebody who'd been working on the campaign. And I just sent him a note and said, you know, are you okay? It looks like it's going the wrong way. And I got back a very sad, short text that read, people are leaving, staff is crying, we're gonna lose. That was the first moment I really felt like we were going to lose. And it was this massive, like, kick in the gut that we were going to lose. And it was really painful.
Really? To grow up, you big baby. But didn't you realize this? It's interesting, really interesting how she describes the election as going in the wrong way. You know, they truly believe that this is not political. They really believe this is not about politics. They believe that this is about right and wrong. And Donald Trump, he isn't a Republican, he's wrong. And we here at Google, we're right. But they honestly know it's a bad look for them, because when Google saw this video had leaked, they apparently panicked and replied to Breitbart by saying, all right, nothing was said at that meeting or any other meeting to suggest that any political bias ever influences the way we build or operate our products. But they can say you didn't hear what you heard with your own ears as much as they want. They can say war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. But their actual words speak for themselves. And here's what we heard with our own ears.
Our values are strong. We will fight to protect them, and we will use the great strength and resources and reach we have to continue to advance really important values.
So don't lie to us and say you will never use political bias to influence how you build your products. Because we just heard your CFO, Ruth Porat, on tape saying you will use your resources to fight and protect your values, which your founder, Sergey Brin, admits your values go against the values of the elected president. Thereby, you are admitting that you at Google will use your determination to thwart the agenda of Donald Trump and those who voted for him. And that is scary. Now, we already know Google, they have a history of trying to influence elections, because an email obtained by Tucker Carlson at Fox News reveals that a senior Google employee by the name of Eliana Murillo used company resources to influence the election in favor of Hillary Clinton with, quote, multifaceted efforts to boost Hispanic turnout in the election. Now, Carlson explained on his show how this amounted to essentially an in-kind contribution to the Hillary Clinton for president campaign. So Google is in no doubt trying to give Democrats a boost. They are in no doubt trying to get Democrats elected. The power Google has over our democracy should be extremely concerning. As Professor Robert Epstein has explained, Google can shift the voting preferences of undecided voters by up to 80% in some demographic groups just by altering the order in which search results are shown. So we should absolutely be worried about Google, more so than any of the other social media platforms. I've maintained that, Twitter, for instance, they are a private company. And so as much as I detest their censorship, and I honestly believe if they just fired their entire speech monitoring department, nothing would happen. Life would be fine, maybe a few hurt feelings, but that's why as adults we have all been taught that words will never break us. Twitter, at the end of the day, are a private company, and they ought to be able to do what they want, as much as I hate it. But Google is much more than just a social media company. Google has the ability to suppress or promote information that could alter the election as early as the elections in these midterms in November. And as a company that has that kind of influence over our democracy, it should be closely watched. The American people, I know, are concerned about this. It is a matter of how many people in Washington are willing to step in.
Okay, I mentioned it last episode, October the 4th, Nation Movement is going to be a red wave, a tsunami, hopefully. The event is going to be Bring Your Bible to School. I plan to, next week, when time gets closer, I'm going to give you more information. We may be talking to a gentleman, his name is Chuck Graham, who brought this to my attention. And he's been writing, he wrote to the Times about, this information about Bring Your Bible to School. Well, guess what? They did not print it. They have, what he's been telling me, now have blackballed him. He used to get printed, his editorials get printed when he first started. They didn't like what he was saying, and now he's on the blackball. He's blacklisted, 0 edits. And the other thing, too, like he said, nobody's talking about this. He's still working feverishly to try to get Franklin Graham, to bring this out in public. So this is what he's working. So we may be getting a telephone call next week, and you could hear what he has to say. And of course, we'll show you the video. So that's all I have. This is episode 2. I hope you'll continue to watch, and we'll bring you more different, hopefully, information that you probably can't get or you weren't aware of, and I'm glad to do it. This is Sully 912 News. Hope to see you again, signing off.